You're on.
People use this line before.
Yeah, you're on.
It's one of my 10, top 10.
Yeah.
Going.
Are we rolling?
You're rolling.
Good. We're here at Saturday morning. The teams have just left the starting chute, all of the teams for the 75th anniversary of the Rondy World Championship sled dog race. We're here with Denny Albert, who's a veterinarian, and she's in charge of the urine collection at this race because they are drug testing dogs here for the first time ever. Denny, tell us a little bit about what you're doing today.
Well, basically the program is, the ASRA board contracted with me or requested that I create a program for them that would fit with this venue, hopefully, to try and do testing for performance-enhancing drugs. And it's pretty much a program similar to any of the other races around that you're familiar with, very familiar with, like Iditarod or the Quest and so forth. All of the races use the same lab, pretty much, that's been doing this for many, many years in Colorado. They're out of Colorado. They tested horses and greyhounds and sled dogs and any performance animals. One of the common ways that you get samples to test is with urine. We can use blood if necessary. You know, dogs, the thing that was challenging about this venue is that I've done this on other races. I've worked in sled dog races for 15 years, but my experience has been in distance and mid-distance races. This is really the first sprint race I've been involved. Well, I usually work as a trail vet or as a head vet. This is truly the first one that I've ever worked on that's a sprint race. And so I am learning a lot at the same time about how it's a little different and how things work. But basically the big thing on this race is that there's a major time constraint.
Right, right.
Which we don't see in these other races.
Yeah.
So collecting urine is, what I did is I put together a couple teams of 3 people, and we have dogs pre-selected when we approach the truck. We ask them for those to put down 1 dog at a time. We have a urine collector. We have someone who is doing the paperwork because of very specific chain of custody, which is necessary, and witnessing and so forth. So there's certain documents that need to be signed at every sample. The sample's sealed, a photograph is taken of the dog.
Oh.
And then they move on to the next dog and then the next truck.
Now, they're in professional human sports. There's the WADA, which is the worldwide. I'm not even sure what it stands for, but it's the organization that's been put together for control of cycling athletes and that sort of thing. Do you guys subscribe to the same kind of protocols for chain of command or chain of possession, I guess, as you called it?
Chain of custody.
Chain of custody. Yeah.
I mean, everything is constantly monitored, witnessed, the paperwork done, samples locked, so it's secure.
Yeah.
And it's basically a legal process that's pretty standard. Yeah.
And if the mushers have their dogs on, say, antibiotics or something that would be legal if they claim it, are there drugs that are legal to use on the dogs but have to be claimed?
Yeah, what
like,
we
say,
have
thyroid drugs and those sort of things?
Yeah, what we have is we have a list that a sheet that is for listing any medications that the dogs are on the 2 weeks prior to the race. And so, yes, it's exactly those kind of things, like thyroxine or antibiotics and so forth. And different kinds of foot ointments, they're given the option of contacting the lab to question them about various kinds of supplements. And sometimes supplements, even over-the-counter supplements, have substances that you would not expect. Right. And the lab can tell them if those things are legal or not. So they all have that. The whole point of this program, from my understanding from the board, is it's only my job to do the program as far as getting the samples, making sure it's documented, making sure it's legal, making it so we interfere as little as possible with the process of the race. That's a major goal that I have. And I always have when I'm working with dogs on the trail, on Iditarod or anywhere else. But that's important to the musher. We're trying to make it as musher-friendly as possible. This is not in any way an adversarial thing. It's actually to support the sport, because what we want those top finishers to be able to say is that they are running drug-free.
Sure.
And this simply is there in order to prove it.
Verification.
Yeah.
What kind of, when you send the samples to the lab in Colorado, what do they look for? Do you guys give the mushers a list of these are the banned drugs?
The mushers have always had a list of prohibited drugs in their rules, and essentially these fall into that category. And there's a lot of drugs on there.
What could you give a sled dog? I mean, what would be some of the possible things that would be performance enhancing for a sled dog?
A lot of things. Pretty much all the same things you can give to humans. There's different kinds of steroids, anabolic steroids, testosterone, there's all the non-steroidal agents, corticosteroids, amphetamines, all the things that fall into the same class with humans, or greyhounds or horses.
In your experience in working in this capacity with dogs, long-distance dogs, more than sprint, have you found there's one thing that you found? Is there any kind of use of drugs? Have you ever found any use of drugs?
This is not, in any race that I have done, which would be when I was head vet for All Alaska Sweepstakes race, the Centennial Running, Grand Portage Passage in Minnesota that happened for about 4 years, a race in South America. I have found questionable things that then proved once the testing went further to be negative. I have not found a problem as yet in this.
That's interesting, because my experience as a musher is that it isn't happening. I don't see it. I don't hear about it. It would be something that would be very cost prohibitive to do at the level that, what are the gains for either the cost of it or the side effects.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
The perception of the public sometimes is different than what we know from the inside. And just as you say, from the inside, you don't see it happening. And from the inside, I don't see competitive, successful mushers doing it, because it doesn't pay.
It's not the return.
It doesn't. No, it's not as. There would certainly be a toll on the dogs. In the long run, it's just not. It's not the appropriate thing to do. The risks certainly outweigh the benefits by far, and so I think, but it's primarily a clean sport, and this is simply to restate that in a formal way, and it's only better for the sport. I think it supports it. I think that long ago, I mean, we know that potentially, if you look at horse racing, greyhound racing, I think
bicycle
in those areas, so there are other things that, that's kind of come to the public eye, and that's another reason why this wants to be, the Rondi really wants to prove that this is professional and it's clean, and that if they win, it's because the dogs deserve it, and on their own, with their own physiology.
We'll leave on that. Denny, thank you for your time. I know it's a busy time for you. Really appreciate the information.
Well, it's a lot less busy now than it was around 2 hours ago.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Bye-bye.